When a police officer walks up to you, smiles and says, "Hey, we just want to have a quick chat," every instinct in your body tells you to relax. He's being friendly, he's casual, he's not putting you in cuffs, he's not reading you your rights. So it must be harmless, right? Wrong. That quick chat is one of the most powerful tools in law enforcement, and understanding why could be the difference between walking away free and spending the next several years of your life regretting the words that came out of your mouth. So today, I'm going to tell you exactly what to say, why to say it, and how to protect yourself without ever being rude, aggressive, or giving them a single reason to escalate. Let's start with the truth that nobody wants to admit. There is no such thing as a quick chat with the police. When an officer says those words, he is not making small talk. He is not curious about your weekend. He is gathering information, and everything you say is being filed away, remembered, and potentially used against you later. Police officers are trained in interrogation. They are trained to make you feel comfortable. They are trained to make silence feel awkward so that you'll fill it with words. And the friendlier they seem, the more careful you need to be, because friendliness is a technique, not a personality trait when someone is trying to build a case. Here's the part most people never realize. The officer talking to you casually on the sidewalk has more legal training and conversation than you have in your entire life. He knows how to phrase a question so that any answer sounds suspicious. He knows how to make you feel like refusing to talk is an admission of guilt. And he knows that most people, out of politeness or fear, will talk themselves right into trouble. You are not obligated to help him do that. So what do you actually say? The magic words are simple, calm, and polite. You look the officer in the eye and you say, "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go?" That's it. That single question cuts through everything. Because legally, there are only two situations you can be in. Either you are free to leave or you are being detained. If you are free to go, then you should go. Politely, calmly, without running, without arguing. And if the officer says you are being detained, then you've just learned something critically important. This is not a chat. This is an investigation, and you are the subject. Let me explain why this question matters so much. The entire quick chat strategy relies on something called a consensual encounter. In legal terms, a consensual encounter is when an officer talks to you and you voluntarily talk back. The key word there is voluntarily, because during a consensual encounter, the officer doesn't need any reason to talk to you. No suspicion, no evidence, nothing. And here's the trap. Anything you say during that voluntary conversation is completely fair game in court. You gave it up freely, nobody forced you. So when you ask, "Am I being detained or am I free to go?" you are forcing the officer to either admit you're free, in which case you leave, or admit you're being detained, in which case the legal protections start to shift in your favor. Now, some of you are thinking, "But if I refuse to talk, won't that make me look guilty?" This is the single most dangerous misconception people have, and it's exactly what law enforcement wants you to believe. Let me be absolutely clear. You have a constitutional right to remain silent, and exercising that right cannot legally be used as evidence of guilt. Innocent people invoke their rights all the time, and smart people invoke them every time. The officer might act disappointed. He might say, "Well, if you have nothing to hide, why won't you talk to me?" Do not fall for it. That question is bait. An innocent person with nothing to hide can still say something that gets twisted, misremembered, or taken out of context. Silence protects the innocent far more than it protects the guilty. So let's walk through a real scenario. You're standing outside a store, minding your own business, and an officer approaches. He says, Hey there, mind if I ask you a few questions? Just a quick chat. Here's your move. You stay calm, you keep your hands visible, and you say, "Officer, I'd rather not answer any questions. Am I free to go?" Notice what you did there. You didn't argue. You didn't get defensive. You didn't insult him. You simply declined to participate and asked to clarify your status. If he says you're free to go, you leave. If he says no, you follow up with the most important sentence in this entire video. "I'm going to remain silent, and I'd like to speak to a lawyer." That sentence does two things at once. It invokes your right to remain silent, and it invokes your right to an attorney. Once you clearly and unambiguously say those words, the officer is legally required to stop questioning you. Now, I want to stress the word clearly. Courts have ruled that mumbling something vague like, "Maybe I should talk to a lawyer," is not enough. You have to be direct. Say it plainly. "I am invoking my right to remain silent. I want a lawyer." No hesitation, no wishy-washy language. Make it undeniable. Now let's talk about tone, because this matters enormously. The goal here is not to be a jerk. The goal is not to lecture the officer about the Constitution or to challenge him to a debate. The goal is to be polite, calm, and completely firm. When you're respectful, you give the officer no reason to escalate, no excuse to claim you are being aggressive or resisting. You want to be the most boring, cooperative, and non-threatening person he's ever tried to question. You comply with lawful commands. You keep your hands where he can see them. You don't reach for anything suddenly. But when it comes to answering questions about where you've been, what you're doing, or what you know, you politely decline every single time. Let me give you a few more phrases to keep in your pocket. If the officer asks to search you or your belongings, you say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Say it clearly, because if you consent, you've waived one of your strongest protections. He may search you anyway if he claims he has probable cause, but by stating that you do not consent, you preserve your ability to challenge that search later in court. If you simply stay silent while he asks, a court might interpret that silence as agreement. So say the words out loud. And here's another critical point. Never ever lie to the police. This might sound like it contradicts everything I've said, but it doesn't. There's a massive difference between staying silent and lying. Staying silent is your constitutional right. Lying to a police officer, on the other hand, can be a crime all by itself. So the strategy is never to make up a story. The strategy is to say nothing at all. Silence is safe. Lies are dangerous. Remember that distinction because it could save you. Now, some of you are dealing with a situation where the officer genuinely just wants information. Maybe about a crime you witnessed, maybe as a good Samaritan. And I get it, sometimes you want to help. That's your choice to make. But even then, understand what you're stepping into. The moment you start talking, you lose control over how your words are used. If you truly want to help, the safest way is often to say, "I'm willing to cooperate, but I'd feel more comfortable doing so with a lawyer present." A genuine, honest cooperation offer with legal protection costs you nothing and protects you completely. Let's talk about what happens if the officer gets frustrated, because he might. He might raise his voice. He might say, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." He might imply that only guilty people ask for lawyers. Stay calm. None of that changes your rights. Pressure, guilt trips, and disappointment are all part of the toolkit designed to get you talking. The stronger the pressure, the more important it is that you hold your ground. Repeat your phrases like a broken record if you have to. "I'm remaining silent. I want a lawyer. Am I free to go?" You don't owe him an explanation. You don't owe him a conversation. You owe yourself protection. So let's bring this all together. When the police say, "We just want a quick chat," here is your game plan. First, stay calm and polite. Second, ask the golden question. Am I being detained or am I free to go? Third, if you're free, leave without another word. Fourth, if you're detained, clearly invoke your rights by saying, I'm going to remain silent and I want a lawyer. Fifth, never consent to searches and never lie. That's it. 5 simple steps that can protect your freedom, your future, and your peace of mind. Because here's the bottom line. The police are not your enemy, but they are not your friend in that moment either. They have a job to do, and that job is to build cases. Your job is to protect yourself. And the beautiful thing is, you can do both at the same time by staying calm, staying silent, and knowing your rights. A quick chat is never just a chat. Now you know exactly what to say. Stay safe out there, and remember, the smartest thing you can say is often nothing at all.